People might be feeling a bit of those January blues post-Christmas, bit miserable, the weather's miserable. Is there any advice you'd give people about if they're feeling a bit sluggish and like this at work, whether it's just a case of the January blues or whether in fact there's more to it?
Yeah.
Because people think about me.
Great question. Look, I actually enjoy January. I like January as a month because I think it forces people to take a good hard look and dig deep, And for some, it's simply just they need to remove a bit of that toxic sludge from Christmas and maybe plan something to look forward to. And actually their job is fine for the most part. They may have the odd bad day, which most people have anyway, even if you're in the right career for you. But for others, actually, it's the time where they really have to take a good hard look at themselves and go with the pit in the bottom of their stomach and say, look, something's not quite right here. And now is my time to look at this because you know what? Another year will pass before I know it. And I've done nothing.
Yeah. And are there any questions you'd recommend that people should ask themselves if they're toying with that idea and they're just not sure whether or not they should move?
Some great questions some great questions are, for example, what's not working here? What do I need more of in my career? What do I need less of? Trying to pinpoint the reason for the dissatisfaction. So trying to box off that it's not just around it's a dull month, January, for some people, that it's just much more than that. And to really examine what it is that's causing them dissatisfaction and frustration, or what I call in my book, career disappointment.
Yeah. And if you're considering changing jobs like that, and you've thought about all those questions and you said, absolutely, that's me to all of them. Is it worth speaking to your employer first and saying, look, I'm unhappy with this, maybe my salary's one of them, whatever it is? Or if you're feeling like that, no, it is a time.
I think, look, it's tempting to go straight for the boss and have a sit down to make things better. But possibly that's just making things better temporarily in your current job and the here and now. I'd be careful. I think I would lay low on it first until you really examined and taken some time to do a bit of introspection work, looking at yourself in this and what's driving you forward now. What are your priorities? Because our priorities change in our career, and then decide when it's a good time to possibly sit down with your boss. But some people's first move is to try and get more money, and they think that this is going to make them much happier. This is the solution to all. And actually, the reality is that it can help temporarily, and of course, money is important to everyone. But there's usually a lot more in it as to why we're dissatisfied in our career than money, in my experience.
And if it's a case like that as well, some people have very long, notice periods before they're able to leave. So maybe you're at the point and you're saying, no, absolutely, I need to go. But you might have a 3-month notice period. Is there anything?
Yeah, look, here's the thing. That 3-month notice period is there for you and for your company. It can work to advantages on both ways. But I think from my experience, once we know we're moving, we can handle anything. We know there's an end game and there's an end point and there's a move to happen. So you can handle that 3-month notice period. But if it's turning you off leaving your job, I'd ask you to think long and hard, because some people can negotiate that down and get a 4 or 6 week period. And if you're worried also about, will a company want me if I have a 3-month notice period? They're quite used to that. And it can also show a level you're operating at, and it can be quite impressive. But in an interview, I would be inclined to say, look, I could do my best to try and get that down.
Perfect. So just if you've joined us now, we're talking about career changes, if you're looking to make a career change yourself, and we're taking questions. So if you've got any, please comment in the section below and we'll try and get to them, okay? So when people are at the interview stage, Skype interviews are something that are becoming more and more popular now. Do you have any advice for anybody?
Yeah, Skype interviews, it's an interesting approach, and I suppose it really calls into play your ability to listen, to pick up for body language cues via a screen. Just make sure from a technical point of view that you're set up in advance and test it. Don't take all of that for granted. It's really important. But again, it's like any interview. The key here is to impress. The key here is to summarize your information really well, show the likability factor, smile. The same things still apply. So I think, let's not get too caught up on what type of format of interview it is, and more focused on the performance of how you can get your message across and your story straight.
Still the same. And then another thing about interviews, is it best practice? What do you do when you're asked, which can happen, about your existing salary? People were asking about that, saying, do you fib a little? Are you honest? Do you say you don't want to answer? Yeah. Is there any sort of...
Anna, you know what? I had this very question this morning with an amazing client I worked with on interview coaching work. Look, what I'd say is the key here is to first of all try and put it back on them, to ask them, do they have a salary range in mind? We're not sure. I'm not sure what the budget is you have for this role. Try and put it back on them. But the bottom line is a good interviewer will get to the information. They will find out the salary that you're currently on and the salary you're seeking. So it probably probably will happen. But the key for you interviewing to make a real success of that is to really talk that the role is number one for you. You don't really want to give them a message that this is about a salary move and a money move, because that doesn't sit very well with employers. It really doesn't, because you could go to the next highest bidder 6 months later. So really focus on showing that you want the role first of all. Yeah, that's key.
Brilliant. We have a question in from Neve. I'm currently working in events communications, but trying to move to the publishing industry. Do you have any tips or advice for people who are trying to change industry while still in the early stages of their career?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, for that person, you've got to look at your transferability and look at the skills that you're using daily now in events and communications that could transfer into publishing. She or he hasn't really said what area of publishing they'd be interested in, so it's hard for me to say. But I mean, I would say, that first of all, you've got to see, well, what are the skills there that you're using daily? How can I use them in a different context while keeping your day job going and continuing to perform on that? So I think you've got to do some detective work there, allocate time to looking at job specs, look at the lingo of that industry, the publishing industry, because to show credibility, you've got to know the lingo of an industry you're aiming towards. Talk to people who are in that industry as well. So it's probably too soon to jump quite yet. Do a bit of groundwork first and then build a plan around it and allocate time.
Brilliant. Des has come in with a question. If I'm without a degree, which courses are best so I have the skills for new upcoming jobs?
Yeah, again, it's quite a general question, but I'll do my best with it. It's okay if you don't have a degree, Des. We can live our life feeling like an imposter if we don't have certain things that tick boxes. Again, you probably have a wealth of experience behind you, so I'd be really looking at those skills. In terms of courses, look, ideally start at a high level. You can start at certificate level and work your way up to the certificate, diploma, and then possibly a degree. And now more than ever, it's easier to do that. So all is not lost here in any shape or form. But again, look at your time, look at how much time you're willing to give this, and you can give this, and the cost involved too.
Question here from Biff. I'm currently trying to get back into what I was doing before I ran my own business for the last 5 years. So he's got 12 plus years of sales experience with an inbox full of rejections. How do I make a company take a perceived gamble on me?
Okay, so this is a guy who worked for himself up until recently. So probably the CV that's going forward is a CV that's a self-employed CV, and it's worrying employers, right? And employers sometimes aren't great at thinking outside the box. When we look at the skills that a self-employed person has, they're huge and plentiful, and they can adapt and they can handle pressure, etc., etc. I know all too well myself. So I suppose, first of all, he needs to create a new brand for himself. The sales guy brand, the sales CV, as opposed to the self-employed CV. The point is, though, the most recent role he has on that CV is self-employed. So we need to talk sales skills in there. So you'd have to do a whole revamp of the CV there. And because he's getting rejections, to me, it says the packaging isn't quite correct yet. So he needs to get that working really well for him. But it's doable, Biff. And, if you do it correctly, you'll fly this, all going to plan.
Yeah, you're doing well about it. Great. So remember, if you've got any questions on this topic at all, please do pop them in the comment section below. We'd love to hear from you. Let me see. Eric is in. He's an architect with over 10 years work experience. I recently started a new company which creates virtual spaces for people to experience projects before they're built. Although I have work coming in, I have lots of free time, and I'm wondering if it's been the right move. Any advice for how I should be searching for new projects?
Very good question, and I see this a lot. Essentially what he's saying here is that he's a little disappointed with his new role. He's a bit bored, and there's gaps in his day there where he's in some way twiddling his thumbs. But I see this as a real opportunity for someone like him. It sounds like it's a progressive, innovative area of architecture. So it's possibly 1-2 back, but he needs to make his work for him. So he needs to ask for more, and he needs to identify what type of work he does want to be doing more of in there. Can he see any gaps? Can he see how he could add more support in given areas, and ask for it? I wouldn't be afraid for him to say, look, to have a sit down and say, look, I'm a little bored. This stuff is going really well, but I have a bit of space here and time. They respect him for it. So I'd like to take on more. Is there anything you'd like me to do, or can I suggest the following? And I know that takes a bit of a neck and a bit of courage, but the alternative is to sit there bored.
Yeah. And nobody even realise it as well at the same time.
company to see this, but a lot of the time they're too busy to even notice. So it's up to us to drive our own career. This is about us being our own career manager and managing our career really well.
One from Sophie: in what way can a career coach help people, and what is the average cost?
Great question. Okay, in what way can a career coach help people? I write about this in my book. Career coaching for career coaching to work for anyone, you've got to show up yourself, and you've got to give it time, energy, and work. That's the bad news. But the great news is with that can come great things. So career coaching does work. It's tried and tested. The programs we run are really tried and tested, and we've great success and great results, which we're really proud of. Again, though, what I'd say, the time has to be right for somebody to work with a coach. There's a lot of work needed in between sessions and commitment needed. So we don't want anyone disappointed. That's the last thing we want when people come to Clearview, that there's disappointment there. In terms of cost, it depends on the level you're operating at, the type of work you do. In terms of, we usually run programs. So it could be a 2 by 2 hour session. Our career transition program is that, or it could be a 2 hour one-off session. Costs really are anything from $220 to $295 or per 2 hours. So it is a significant investment. But again, for what you're getting in return, we believe it's really good value. We're looking at changing someone's life here in their career and their satisfaction and their well-being and happiness.
Yeah, okay, absolutely. Clive's got a question. Are MBAs worth the time and cost?
Okay, MBAs. Look, I've worked with amazing clients with MBAs who've done brilliant things with them. What I advise anybody who's considering an MBA is ask yourself why you're doing it and what you want to get out of it. We don't do MBAs because we don't know what we want to do with our career and we've hit a juncture where we're a bit bored. We do MBAs because we want to leverage our career and develop it. So we need to know where we're going with it. So I'd say anybody who's doing an MBA, you've got to make sure you have a career plan, or that you're utilising the service available to you in an MBA programme to do your career planning, to get it right, so you know what you're doing with it after. MBAs are, they're up to date, most of them, and they're about best practice around, thought leadership, etc., etc. They're really worth doing. Any education is worth doing. It's a heavy, heavy investment. So you just want to make sure you know why you're doing it and what you're seeking to get from it.
Brilliant. Jane, got a query in here from someone who seems to be stuck in a bit of a rut. I'm in the same job for 13 years. No hope of progression or sufficient wage increase anytime soon. Considering adult education training courses, but trying to find out what my skill set, how to find my skill set. A lot of people. Yeah.
That's a classic person who's been in their career for a long time, and they're almost on autopilot, bored, knows there's something more in them, but hasn't done anything about it yet, but wants to. And I would say that as a broad piece of advice, I'd say absolutely education is going to help here, because you're showing intent. You're showing a potential market or a potential employer that you mean business, that you're serious about this. So I would suggest any form of upskilling or adult education could really help. But again, you've got to know what you want to pick in terms of potential courses. So you need to consider the skills you now want to be using, what you could happily ditch or shed in terms of your skills, and make a plan for that. So this is really about defining what it is you want next. But there's also a dirty word called sacrifice in there too. So that person is used to a certain standard of living, a certain job, a certain safety, a certain security, and there's a fear then creeping in that if they make that change, what's going to change in their life, So we do this slowly as opposed to doing it overnight, because that's where people get scared if they think it's sort of a big knee-jerk reaction. But for someone like that, 2018 is a fresh year, and let's use that to make a change. It sounds like this person really wants to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess people now probably change jobs much more frequently than that. That's quite a long time. And another query which is similar, if you've been with your current employer over 10 years, is it advisable to change employer? Could you be preventing career progression staying in the one place so long?
Yeah, you know what? I would say the answer to that is, for the most part, yes. I don't like giving magic bullet pieces of advice that work for everyone, but for the most part, yes. I would say really 5 to 8 years is sort of the amount of time you should give an organisation. Again, it depends on your age as well. It depends on your experience. It depends on what you're trying to do. But, you will at times get questions around an interview around, are you institutionalised, et cetera, et cetera. I wouldn't worry about that though too. If you're somebody who's listening to this and has shown progression or shown taking on new tasks and skills, or have done some upskilling and qualifications and stayed put for 10 years, don't worry. It's really fine. You've shown me that you're developing yourself. But for anybody who's listening to this who may not have done a lot in the last few years, now is your time. Make 2018 the year to try and develop yourself a bit more. And I would be seeking potentially a move, and not a move for the sake of it, a move that's right for you.
And a lot of the time you hear people say, it's not necessarily the job that you don't like. It could be the environment sometimes. So you could be somewhere 10 years thinking this career isn't for me, but you need to ask yourself, are you enjoying what you're doing every day?
And one of the first tasks I do when I work with somebody is we would look at what we call a wheel of work, and we'd really do a deep dive on the parts of the work that are and aren't working for them. So this could be recognition, they're not getting enough of it, salary, professional development, are they learning enough? Scope for promotion, they're not getting that, so they're fed up. For others, they don't want promotion, they don't care about promotion, it depends. Purpose and passion, relationship with their boss, relationship with their peers, and for a lot of people actually the day-to-day work they really enjoy, believe it or not. It's everything else that isn't working for them. Work-life balance, or potentially the organisation they've had enough of, or their boss. So there's lots of other reasons away from just the day-to-day work you're doing.
Okay, so it's important to kind of be able to diagnose it. Yeah.
But you have to give yourself time to do this. So I would always say that if we spent less time giving out about our work situation and more time actually thinking about it and diagnosing it a bit better, we'd be in a much better place.
Yeah, because it's very easy, especially this time of year. We're all, the weather's not helping.
Our bank balance isn't helping. Our sluggishness isn't helping. There's so many things.
Diagnosis. And would you recommend people to write it down?
Absolutely. Write it down. And really, you can even just Google and you'll find a wheel of work and just do a quick exercise on yourself to see where you're at in terms of these areas, and rate yourself out of 10. Maybe pick 5 headings that are important to you in your work and say, well, look, for example, work-life balance, it's now a 5 out of 10, so I'm operating at 50% of my satisfaction levels. That's not good. What needs to change there, and how does that inform what I want next, etc., etc.
Yeah, okay. Perfect. A question in from John. I'm in the first semester of my degree. Do you have some advice at this stage as I get ready to join the workforce? So very proactive there, John.
Wow, first semester of degree, so has a while yet before it goes out to the working world. Hopefully may get some work experience along the way. So, sorry, what was the question?
So basically he's just saying, do you have any advice at this stage?
Right. Okay. The very fact he's even got in touch with us says to me, this is a man somebody who's going to take control of his career at an early stage. Get to know your career service in your organisation, in your university, really well. That's the first point. That's a service that's there for you to use and a great resource. So from first year, I suggest you get to know that service well and utilise it. Most people tend to do it at the back end of their final year of their degree, but do it now. The other thing is, really just get to grips with the subjects you're doing and get a sense of the subjects you're really naturally enjoying, the ones that really you get a kick out of, as opposed to the ones that don't come quite so naturally to you and aren't really your thing.
Yeah. And that's something, I guess, in school we all had to work so hard, and maybe the subjects you weren't good at and the ones, they came easy. In work life, would you say to people, whatever, if it's taking that much out of you?
Yeah, I mean, that's my gut feel. I think we're always, to get a career that works for us, I think we need to be looking at our values, our interests, our personality and our strengths, So if we can play to our strengths in our career, I mean, it stands to reason that, we're going to be much better at it, and we're going to naturally be better at it. Yeah. So I often talk about a career that's natural to us, or a career that's an extension of who we are. That makes much more sense. And that's about career success rather than a career that you feel you're using skills that aren't really your innate skills. Yeah. Don't get me wrong though, every job has skills that you may not want to use at times. Yeah. Even in my work that I love, there's times when there's skills that I don't really want to be using, but I need to.
And so at this time of the year, if you're doing that one job that it bores you or whatever it is, it can probably have more weight than it needs to.
Absolutely. And remember, reward yourself. I'm a big believer in rewarding yourself. Mm-hmm. If you do something that you don't want to be doing, but you need to be doing, to have a reward built in for when it's done.
So what kind of reward?
It could be the smallest thing, like taking a half day. It could be climbing a mountain. It could be going and buying your favourite lipstick. It depends on our intrinsic motivators, what kind of rewards we like to see in ourselves.
But do it for yourself. Don't always be necessarily waiting for praise coming from somewhere else.
Live with it too long, because then it just becomes an energy drain where we're just going around in circles and circles and keeping at it.
Okay. I'm at a bit of a crossroads with work. I'm a metal fabricator by trade and have worked in this field since I finished school. I could do with some professional advice on how to change career and what other work might suit. I am now 38 years old.
Okay, so first of all, I'd say from an age point of view, the next few years are really important in trying to make this change. Okay. No pressure, but I think it makes sense if you're serious about this. So this is somebody who's probably more or less gone into a trade, so to speak. Yeah. And it's quite a specific area of work. I would do what I would do with anybody, which is really get clear on, first of all, is there skills in there that you can transfer? What skills do you absolutely not want to be using anymore? What is it about your work that's currently not working for you? What is this move about for you? And trying to build ideas of options available to this person. So I'd say first things first, you could also do some assessments online, get a sense of your core strengths, maybe do an MBTI, a Myers-Briggs profile. So there's groundwork that could be done there. But I think the biggest thing for someone like that person is to really just say, okay, do that diagnosis of what's not working, first of all, and what needs to change, and put a timeline on this. Otherwise, we could go on and on and on this. But that person's at a great age to change. 38 is a great age to change, in my opinion.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, that's very promising. Another one, this is from James, and it's again, is an MBA better than an MBS?
Okay, I suppose it also depends on where you're going with this MBA or where you're going with this MBS. So it's a tricky question, but it's a great question of that. Look, an MBA is probably seen to be at a more higher level. Yes, and it's broader and it covers more. In saying that, though, an MBS can be a very good route for people too. Again, just know what you're doing it for and what you want from it.
Okay. Fair enough. Kira's come in with a question. Any advice for someone thinking of making the move from employee to starting their own business?
Great. Okay. I've been there, so I can certainly give advice, I think. I hope it's the right advice. So moving from being an employee where you get a regular paycheck to actually then going out to be self-employed. Okay. So what I'd say is, in terms of the self-employed route, you have to have a clear business plan in place as to what you're doing. What is it you're doing and what's the plan there? What are the finances around it? How's it going to work? What about marketing? What about the branding of it? Is it using the exact same skills, but you're doing it in more of a freelance, self-employed route? Or is it something totally different, like producing a product or selling a service online? So again, it depends on what it is, but have a clear business plan. Take your time with it. Again, though, don't live with it too long. Take your time with it. Don't jump too soon, okay? If you can try to hold the day job down for the longest period possible until you're ready to leap, do that, because that gives you regular income coming in. I've seen people also successfully navigate sort of a 3-day week in their current job. So they've some regular income coming in while they're building a business. And that allows them a little bit of assurance and a little bit of sort of, feeling that they're safe enough, So I'd suggest get the business plan tightened, know what it is you're doing, know why you're doing it and what it'll give you. Watch out for people in your life who are saying, are you mad? Are you crazy? You have a steady job. Go with your gut feel if you feel it's right, but don't knee-jerk it and avoid knee-jerking it. And just be clear about your vision for where you want it to go.
Okay. And that whole knee-jerking, that the idea of doing that, I guess that works with a lot of things. This time of the year, if you're feeling tired, if you're feeling exhausted and thinking, I need a new career, that's probably the worst time to do it.
It is. But as I said early on, when we spoke today, I think it's also a time where we use that dissatisfaction to put the energy into making changes as opposed to just giving out. But I would say, just to watch any knee-jerk situation. Now, that's different if you're being seriously bullied and this is about your mental health and you really are at the end of it. That's a whole different ball game here. But I'm talking about the person who's just a bit fed up in their work. Yes.
Brilliant. That's all we have time for today. But thank you so much to our career coach from Clearview Coaching Group, Jane Downs.
Thank you for having me in.
Great. And thanks for everybody who's commented and put in questions in the comment section below. Cheers. Thank you.